Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk speaking. Now, first of all, thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Now, I am very excited to let you know that the podcast is now available on Amazon Alexa. You know the drill. Simply say, Alexa, play Public Relations Review Podcast, and she'll take it from there. And again, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy the program, please become a subscriber. Now, on to the podcast. Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk, producer and host of the Public Relations Review Podcast. When I conceived this program, my idea was to provide public relations practitioners with a wide variety of solid, useful information and guidance from public relations professionals across America. And we are doing that. I will continue to cover important topics such as crisis communications and artificial intelligence and other such important topics. But I will also address other issues such as diversity in public relations, marketing to women, public relations trends, various data concerns, and much more. From time to time, I will also invite vendors of public relations products on to help you better understand how these products can improve your efficiency and your effectiveness. You will learn a lot from our podcast, so thank you for listening, and please inform your colleagues about the Public Relations Review Podcast and continue listening. Thank you so very much.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review Podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review Podcast and to our listeners across America and around the world. My first guest is Jason Parson. He is the president and CEO of Parson Associates, a veteran-owned minority public relations firm that holds multiple certifications. Jason is an Iraqi Freedom veteran, and the Ford Motor Company recognized him as a Ford Freedom Unsung Hero for his work supporting veterans. Jason has led regional, national initiatives related to green-collar jobs, youth development of jobs and life skills, and education, energy, and water quality. Also joining Jason on the call today is Alex Miller, who is communications coordinator at Parson & Associates as well. So from Kansas City, Missouri, let me welcome both Jason and Alex to the program. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Yeah, everything's great. Thanks for having us on today.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, let's start with you. Give us an overview of what it took for you to make the transition from the military to a public relations executive.
So my journey, and I'll be brief, he talked about the military. I joined the military right out of high school. I was 17 years old, and for me, it was the best decision I've ever made in my life. At the time, I needed some direction and certainly could use some money to help pay for college, and the military provided both. But fast forward to how I started the company and what that journey was like. On February 10, 2003, about 3:30 p.m., got a call. It was time to go to war. And so we were part of the invasion in Iraq. And while there, I had a chance to really think through as far as what are my next steps if I, so fortunate to make it home. And the thing I realized is I wanted to do more. I, at the time, was employed by the city of Kansas City, Missouri, enjoyed my job, but felt like I want to have the impact on my community that we're having in the country of Iraq when we went from war to occupying the country and when we were helped rebuilding the country. And I sort of wanted to do the same thing in my community, is to help rebuild it. So upon returning home, I resigned from my job at the city of Kansas City, Missouri, and started a journey trying to figure out what does that look like. Long story short, I started working part-time in the public relations industry, and eventually I had an opportunity to branch out on my own, and I did, and I think if I hadn't gone to war, I'm not sure I would have, because that certainly allowed me to put things in perspective, and it gave me the courage to realize, hey, what's the worst thing that could happen as you branch out, that you're not successful? And, when you start to understand life and death, then it makes making those kind of decisions a lot easier.
Okay. Well, let me just quickly ask Alex, how did you and Jason come together?
So I started with the firm actually as their at Parson Associates' first ever intern in the summer of 2014. One of the projects we were working on was the construction of the downtown Kansas City, Missouri streetcar. So it was just one of those things where they needed help with they just needed some help with all the work they were doing for the construction of the streetcar. So I became an intern. I worked for them throughout the summer. I went back to college for my last semester, and I graduated in the of the winter of 2014. And then I got a call from Jason that winter, and he said, hey, you want to just come back on and work full time? And the rest is history. So I've been with the firm now for, I always laugh because I say I'm getting older. So I've been at the firm now about 6 years.
That's good to hear. But Jason, let me get back to you now. Just talk about your journey of building the firm. I mean, how you went about getting your first contract and how you built on it from that point forward.
So it's very interesting you talk about first contract, because when I started Parson and Associates, I started basically with a safety net, meaning that one of the local PR firms encouraged me to branch out, and the owner of the firm, she had so much work that she said, I will sub some work out to you, and then eventually you'll be able to get on your feet and grow your own business. Well, ironically, shortly after I started the company, she lost most of her major contracts. And so that safety net was then gone. And at that point, it was a matter of doing whatever it took to try to build the business, which there are some very trying times. I think oftentimes we see businesses, and if there's a semblance of success, we tend to think it's always been that way. And most businesses have had to endure trying times through and through in order to reach however we want to define success. But it's never happened overnight.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been a journey.
It's interesting in terms of starting a company, because I came to Nashville as a vice president at Fisk University here. All of a sudden, that job disappeared because when the president resigned, all of their other folks were going to be replaced by the incoming group. So there I was deciding whether I would stay here in Nashville or move back to Washington, D.C. I decided I liked Nashville, and other folks, because my background also suggested that I start a PR firm. But one of the things I didn't want to do was just to start it, because I realized if I wanted to get some business, I had to make a big splash some sort of way. To make a long story short, my very first major contract I got was with the Nashville Ballet. And that said a lot about who I was and what I was capable of doing. Now, the tricky part, there was no money involved because the ballet had spent it all on advertising. So my compensation, I negotiated basically a handful of season tickets because the executive director said, we don't have any money, but we never sell out. We got plenty of season tickets.
Yeah, but come enjoy your show. You're going to come on an empty stomach, but nonetheless, it'll be a great show.
But the bottom line, the reason that I wanted that contract was because of the name. And as soon as I got that deal, because basically what I was doing was because they had a community outreach program talking to senior citizens' homes or whoever wanted to maybe come see the ballet rehearse or take the rehearsal to them. But that allowed me to put it in the newspaper that this brand new company has secured a contract with the Nashville Ballet. That really started the ball rolling for me. So, I had to use those kinds of things to to help launch the company without it just being a single line somewhere buried in the newspaper?
Well, it's interesting you say that because my journey, company's journey, is similar. There was a time when I was running some local races, and one race in particular, it was previous mayor's race, and there was no money involved. I was making at one point, I think, $500 a month, and so like you, I mean, there was really not much compensation at all. And I didn't necessarily do it for the name ID. In this particular case, I had so much respect for the candidate that, you know, I felt he, you know, would have made for a great mayor. And so I did it, and he didn't win. And it's funny because how things work out sometimes. I think ultimately that too was a blessing. Certainly not at the time, because when we lost, I had really no business on the books. And so that was another challenging time as it relates to trying to keep the doors open of the firm. But by him losing really turned out to be a blessing, because in the end, it opened up many more doors that I'm not sure would have been opened if he had won. I certainly would have had plenty of opportunities if he had won, and wonderful experiences. So let me be clear about that. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there's something to be said in losing. And I'll be real brief, but about a month ago, I was asked to give a keynote speech at a graduation. And the highlight of the speech was, in Kansas City in the last 5 years, we've had a World Series champion and a Super Bowl champion. Mm-hmm. And I said, though, to me, the most telling years were not in 2015 and 2020. I think the years that were just as important, if not more, were in 2014 and 2019. And the reason why I say that is this. So in 2014, the Kansas City Royals were in the World Series, and we had a runner, Alex Gordon. He was the tying run on third base, and we made an out. And so with that last out with Alex Gordon on third base, we lost the World Series. Well, in 2019, with the Chiefs, we had a guy, D Ford, jump off. He was lined up offside, which nullified an interception, which then meant we lost the game to New England, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And in the speech I was saying is, we always forget about those trying times when we are tested the most. And we remember the crowning achievements, the Super Bowl and the World Series. But in life, if you don't have the adversity of having someone lined up off sides and having someone being stranded at third base, when the time comes to celebrate the success, I'm not sure if we truly embrace the success with building up and going through those trying times. Like, one of my favorite quotes is, experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. And that's the way I look at life. Like, all throughout our challenges as a firm, as we've grown, I can look at the times where we've had success and say, would that success have happened if not we hadn't had those trying times?
You know, we've both had some background in politics, and again, I used that to help open some doors for me in keeping everything above board, because here, our city council, all of their press releases are written by one person down there somewhere around the mayor's office, and you've got whatever it is, 20 some odd people trying to get their press releases out. So I talked to several of them. I said, well, fine, I'll make a deal with you. I will do your press releases for you for free. That way you'll get them out faster, so forth and so on.
Right.
However, what I'm going to ask you to do for me is that when I need to get to see somebody, particularly in the city government, if you will make that introduction for me, just open the door. That's all that's required, and I'll stand or fall on my own. But if I just call and ask for an appointment, I know what I'm going to hear. Will they know what this is about? Well, no, they won't, because they don't know who I am. But I know, hearing from a city council person, at least they will let me in the door. And I used that several times, and some of them I just didn't get at all, but a couple of contracts I wound up getting, because once I had the appointment, could make the presentation, they said, hey, well, this guy seems like he can do what he knows how to do, what he says he can do, and that worked for me. So I always look for avenues to use or to help somebody accomplish what they need to accomplish, and in the process, perhaps I can get something out of that as well.
So true.
So Alex, let's talk to you a bit now in terms of not only are you the communications coordinator, but what else do you do at the firm, and how have you helped propel Carson's to the level that they've reached thus far?
Yeah, so, it's funny, right? What you both were just talking about is, and it's something that Jason speaks a lot about, and it's something we talk to our clients a lot about. It really is all about relationships, right? And so that's the value when we call it public involvement or public engagement, is, a lot of PR agencies are doing all the social media and things like that. And obviously we do a lot of that too, right? But being a small company, so just, about 5 years ago, I was just in an office. It was me, Gina, who works at our office, and Jason, and all three of us were and we had two other folks working off site with a different client. But then, there's just really three of us in that office every day, and it's really hard to market yourself when you're small and when you're kind of playing the face of so many different projects, right? So, for example, when we were doing the construction for the downtown streetcar, even a lot of the work we're doing, helping out the Kansas City Water Department on some different projects, a lot of times we're acting as an arm to their already established marketing departments, right? Or we're acting almost as like that. We're just helping them add capacity. So it's hard for us to be like, hey, we're at this. It's hard to write a social media post when we're trying to say like, hey, as part of this contractor, we are helping them put on this public meeting. But this is like our work that you're seeing on the boards or on these maps. And so that was always kind of hard for us as a small company, is to market ourselves and talk about that work that we're doing. So what I've kind of helped do the last couple of years is, obviously with social media, for a while I was always our token millennial. So anytime we needed to do something on Twitter or Facebook, I was always kind of doing that. But now, as we've brought in some other folks, as we've continued to grow, it's funny, I always say that I don't really understand Instagram anymore, or Snapchat or TikTok or all these new things, but the younger people that we've hired now, they do a great job of taking those ideas we had years ago but never really had the time to implement, and now they're really implementing, coming up with creative ideas on their own and things like that. So now, as I've continued to be able to grow, and that's what's been great for me as a young professional, is working at such a small company, that I kind of have to get the opportunity now to grow with the company. So the company continues to grow, I continue to grow, we continue to bring on new staff, which gives me some leadership training, and everything we do, since we are so small, if you're not carrying your weight, everyone knows, immediately. And so I love the environment we're in. We're such a great team, and that speaks from the top down, right? Jason's not afraid to stay late one night and vacuum the office before he leaves. It's not one of those things where he says, see you guys later at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to go play golf, you guys finish up. That's like never happened. So that work ethic, that getting the job done and getting done right, really comes from the top. So that's something that I've had the opportunity to learn from and grow from, and something that I try to instill in the new staff that we bring on.
It sounds like your company and the one that I have, we walked a similar path in terms of our growth and development. And I've always looked for a place. So where's a platform that I can get on, that I can offer advice to people? And the other thing is also which platform to get on, because as I hear you talk about social media, I also don't forget that a lot of the decision makers are those people who are still reading the opinion columns and op-ed pieces in the newspapers. So I want to make sure that I don't take my eye off of that particular ball to also reach them as well. Yeah, and what we always say is we want to be intentional with our engagement and our outreach. So, for example, we might be hosting a public meeting
about a water main replacement in a neighborhood in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that public meeting, right, like, of course we're going to use Facebook and Nextdoor and Twitter and help draft those posts and take pictures or whatever we need to do to talk about that public meeting digitally. But in addition to that, it's just a tool in the toolbox, right? And I always say, how many times are you scrolling through Facebook or, whatever social media, you see an ad, you actually click on that ad, you go to the ad's website, you put the thing in your shopping cart, and you buy it just because you saw the Facebook ad.
Mm-hmm.
It normally takes months and months of seeing that, of hearing your friends talk about it, hearing your neighbors talk about it. It helps. It helps when you see it on your Facebook ad screen, but it's rarely, I feel like, is it the only time you've ever heard about something is on that one Facebook ad, and that's why you bought it, right? So it's the same way when we do these public meetings. It's more for us. It's more than just posting about it on Facebook and Twitter, and then when only 10 people show up saying, well, like, oh, we can't believe no one else came. When for us, each neighborhood gets a specific target, right? We know that this person's in charge of that neighborhood association and that they're really close with Councilman X, Y, or Z or Councilwoman whoever, and that, or this council person sends out a monthly email blast. We need to make sure that if we're going to have this public meeting, that we push it out to a date that's far enough in advance that we can get it into their monthly email newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
Or, maybe we're going to go print off just in the digital age, we still to this day will print out 8.5 by 11 flyers on our copier here at the office and then go take them to community centers and put them down. Because like you said, right, everyone's still getting their information differently. And for us, it's how many touches can we get? How many times can we get it out there? And, it's one thing just to post a tweet about a meeting or something like that, but it's another thing to post a tweet and then actually go into that community that you're trying to serve and be intentional with who you're serving and making sure that you're hitting everyone in that neighborhood.
So, Jason, getting back to you, just in terms of your getting contracts in Kansas City, do most of your contracts come by way of local or state government or the private industry or a combination thereof?
Well, it's primarily it is local municipality, but what I've been trying to do is to diversify our work portfolio. I remember going to a conference in Atlanta, Georgia, and this guy stands up and says, "You don't want to have an ape for a contract." I'm thinking, where is he going with all this? So you don't also want to have a bunch of little monkeys. And what he was talking about as far as an ape is concerned is just the one big large contract that is profitable, but if you lose it, you could go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And then he mentioned the little monkeys, and he was talking about little contracts that are not necessarily profitable, but they take up all your time. He said what you really want are some orangutan type contracts, not as big as a ape or gorilla, but a medium size. And I thought about that for years, and what I've tried to do is to, whether it's local municipality or in the private sector, is to really try to balance it out. Because, like, for example, now in this economy, if you are so invested in one and things are shutting down, then that could cause a real dire situation as it relates to your business.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, we've been doing a much better job of reaching out to the private sector to diversify our work portfolio. And at one point, we were even working out of state, and that's something else in 2020 I had wanted to do, was to explore opportunities outside of Kansas City. Now, obviously, with things the way they are, that's put on hold.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, in order for us to continue to grow, and I think the other part of that is there's healthy growth. I think oftentimes people want to grow. Well, that's fine, but be careful that you don't grow yourself out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing that, I've really wanted to be protective of. Alex talked about being here since he was an intern. Well, the one thing I've always believed in is investing in people and not things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if I can help Alex grow and learn, help him become not only a better employee, but along the way, hopefully a better person, then that's great. And so that's been my focus is not only Alex, but the entire team is how do we invest in people and do it in a way you certainly want to have a return on your investment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, because you're a firm, but ultimately, if you have good people doing great work, clients are happy, and then the job becomes how do you have such a diverse pool of work that you can have smart, sustainable growth.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've tried to do here is when there's an opportunity to create something that's new, that has not been done before. And I think one of the first things we did, this was back in 2010 when the 2010 census was coming out. And I recognized that the Hispanic population here in Nashville was growing. At the state of Tennessee, it was growing. And at the time, I was on the board of directors for the Tennessee Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I said, hey, look, I've got an idea. With the census coming out, and we know the Hispanic population is growing, why don't we make a presentation to business leaders as to how to develop programs to attract the Hispanic population to their particular establishments? Well, the president liked the idea. To make a long story short, the other thing I also knew about is perception. How do we make sure that when people see this, they can say that, hey, this is a quality program? To make a long story short,
right.
we found the guy who was going to be a presenter. We tracked him down. He was from the Pew Hispanic Research outfit up in Washington, D.C., and they're unquestioned about the quality of work they do. It just so happened as the associate director, he was a Hispanic. Wow, look at this thing. Now, where do we have it? We were fortunate enough that one of the folks on the project was close to one of the universities. So now, all of a sudden, we're going to have what we wind up calling the first ever Tennessee Hispanic Census Summit. We had it at a local university. I was fortunate enough to get the mayor to come to be an opening speaker. Well, rather than just a business, we also added on education and health. So we had 3 different panels. So to also push this, as I had the guy who at the time was the editorial writer for the newspaper to do an interview with the director of the Pew Hispanic Research Center for his newspaper about this census coming. Wow. Now all of a sudden we have a major project. The first time this has ever been done. We sold out on this thing. We charged folks, I don't know, maybe $35 to come, wind up getting national publicity off of this thing. So it's those kinds of things in terms of,
right.
Here is something that has not been done before. We did it, and we still continue to raise that as a flag to say, look what we can do to help you, because we listen to you and we think and we help you succeed at what it is you want to do.
It's outstanding. And, as a business owner, you have to continue to look for those type of opportunities. And, that's amazing. Great job on that.
Well, let me just ask you, as we maybe begin to close down, what are some of the things that you would like to see happen to Parson and Associates as you go down the road?
We would like to venture into federal work. We've done some, but not to the degree in which I think we're able to. So that's an area where we need to shift our focus and really figure out what is that space that we can work in on the federal level that we could be added value. And so we're trying to figure that out, as well as continuing to look at opportunities in similar to smaller size cities, Omaha or Louisville, cities of that size, where we could work with local communities and work with firms that we work with here in Kansas City that in most cases they do work in other cities and work with them on projects in other cities. And that's what we did this past year. One of the firms that we work with here in Kansas City asked that we join them on a project out of town. And so we were able to in essence, open up a small shop and do some work out of town. And so I think revisiting those relationships and letting them know that that's something you would like to explore. Because the one thing that I found is that people are willing and wanting to help you, but you have to communicate that. And that's the one thing that, we moved into a new office last year. It was a busy year. So now that things have settled down as far as just a lot of moving parts, we're able now to refocus on accomplishing some of those things that we set forth to accomplish in the past. So I just want to continue to have smart, sustainable growth, continue to hire a great staff, and I think that's just as important as anything else, and allow people to grow and do their job and let them know that, they have the space and the opportunities to do that. And that for me, as the owner of the company, that I'm supportive of them. And lastly, I tell you this, as a small firm, one of the other keys is when there are opportunities to grow, to always try to first do it internally. That's the key to, and when you have competent and motivated staff, that's easy to do. So we look forward to continued success, not only in 2020, but hopefully for many years. And one day, like I told you a few weeks ago, I would love to, Alex and I, we could come down to Tennessee and love to break bread with you.
Well, I'd certainly let's say this. We will make that happen. There's no question about that. Let me also add to something you said in terms of looking down the road, because I, too, want to do some federal work. Because one of the things I've noticed about that is it's longer. Once you get a contract, you could wind up having it for years. So that adds to a sense of security. And I've seen a lot of companies go do very, very well simply on nothing but federal contracts. So that's a goal that we do share. And so we'll talk offline about, getting together. And let me right now, as we sort of wrap this up, thank both you and Alex, and of course for Alex for reaching out here to have joined us on the Public Relations Review podcast. And hope we'll have a chance to not only meet each other, but maybe have another interview with you in the near future.
Certainly look forward to it. Take care and be safe.
Okay. Well,
yes, thank you so much for your time and everything today. We appreciate it.
Well, also let your friends and neighbors know that you were on the program, and as I've mentioned to you before, you will be getting a copy of the show. Okay, so thank you again, and I want to thank all of our listeners for listening, and be sure to let your friends know that they too should listen to the Public Relations Review podcast.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk. First, let me say thank you so much for being a listener. Now, I want to alert you to our shiny new podcast website located at podpage.com. However, you can go directly to the podcast site located at publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. There, you can contact me through email. You can leave a voice message. You can leave a review. You can read an episode blog and frequently learn about the podcast guests. You might also want to suggest podcast topic ideas or even suggest a guest. You can also let me know if you would like to receive our podcast listener logo that you can post on your social media. So I look forward to hearing from you about our new podcast website. Thank you so much for listening to the Public Relations Review podcast, and have a great day.